Bahira the monk, when Allah's messenger was 12 years old, and they say plus 2 months and 10 days, he went with his uncle Abu Talib on a trade journey to Syria. When they reached Basra, which was a part of Syria in the vicinity of Haran under the Roman domain, there was a monk named Bahira. They say his name was Georges, who came out to meet them. Although he had not met them before, he easily recognized the Prophet and said, while taking his hand, "This is the master of all humans. Allah will, Allah will send him with a message which will be a mercy to all beings." Abu Talib asked, "How do you know that?" He replied, "When you appeared from the direction of Aqaba, all the stones and trees prostrated themselves, which they never do except for a prophet. I can also recognize him by the seal of prophethood, which is below his shoulder, like an apple. We have found this in our books." He also asked Abu Talib to send the boy back to Makkah and not to take him to Syria for fear of the Romans and Jews. Abu Talib obeyed and sent him back to Makkah with some of his male servants. The sacrilegious wars. When he was 20 years of age, the sacrilegious wars, which continued with varying fortunes and considerable loss of human life for a number of years, broke out between tribes. The Quraysh and Banu Kinana were on one side and Qais, a alien tribe, on the other. It was thus called because the inviolable was made viable, the prohibited months being included. Harb bin Umayyah, on account of his outstanding position and honorable lineage, used to be the leader of Quraysh and their allies. In one of those battles, the Prophet assisted his uncles. His efforts were confined to picking up the arrows of the enemy as they fell and handing them over to his uncles. Al Fudul Confederacy. At the conclusion of these wars, during the sacred month of Dhul Qada, when peace was restored, people felt the need to form a confederacy at Makkah for suppressing violence and injustice and protecting the rights of the weak and the poor. Representatives of Banu Hashim, Banu al Muttalib, Asad bin Abdul Uzza were called to meet in the house of an honorable elderly man called Abdullah to enter into a confederacy that would provide for the above mentioned items. Allah's Messenger, shortly after he had been honored with the ministry of prophethood, witnessed this league and commented on it with very positive words. "I witnessed a confederacy in the house of Abdullah. It was more appealing to me than herds of cattle. Even now, in the period of Islam, I would respond positively to attending such a meeting if I were invited. In fact, the spirit of this confederacy and the course of considerations therein marked a complete departure from the pre Islamic tribal pride. The story that led to its convention says that a man from the Zubayt clan came as a merchant to Makkah, where he sold some commodities. The latter avoided paying for the goods. The trader sought help from some of his allies from the Quraysh, but they paid no heed to his earnest pleas. He then went to a mountain top and began at the top of his voice to recite verses of complaint, giving an account of the injustice he had sustained. Az-Zubair bin Abdul Muttalib made inquiries into the matter. Consequently, the parties to the aforesaid confederacy convened their meeting and managed to force money for the man from Zubair out of Al bin Wail. Muhammad's early occupation. Muhammad had no particular job at his early youth, but it was reported that he worked as a shepherd for Bani Saad. and in Makkah for a wage. At the age of 25, he went to Syria as a merchant for Khatija. Reported that Khatija, daughter of Khuwailid, was a businesswoman of great honor and fortune. She used to employ men to do her business for a certain percentage of the profits. The Quraysh were merchants, so when Khatija was informed of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his truthful words, great honesty, and kind manners, she sent for him. She offered him money to go to Syria and do business for her, and she would give him a higher rate than the others. She would also send her servant Maisara with him. He agreed and went with her servant to Syria for trade. His marriage to Khatija. When he returned to Makkah, Khatija noticed greater profits and blessings in her business than usual. Her servant also told her of Muhammad's good manners, honesty, deep thought, sincerity, and faith. Upon realizing this, she developed a wish for marriage. Earlier, many prominent men had asked for her hand in marriage, but she had always refused their advances. She disclosed her wish to her friend Nafisa, daughter of Munia, who immediately went to Muhammad to inform him. He agreed and requested his uncles to go to Khadija's uncle to discuss the matter. Subsequently, they were married. The marriage agreement was witnessed by Bani Hashim and the chiefs of Mudar. This took place after the Prophet's return from Syria. He gave her 20 camels as a dowry. At the time, she was 40 years old and was considered the best of women in lineage, fortune, and wisdom. She was the first woman Allah's Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam married. He did not get married to any other until she passed away. With the exception of Ibrahim, Khatija bore all of his children Al Qasim, Zainab, Ruqayya, Kulthum, Fatima, and Abdullah, who was also called Tayyib and Tahir. All his sons died in their childhood, and all the daughters except Fatima died during his lifetime. Fatima died 6 months after his death. All his daughters witnessed Islam, embraced it, and immigrated to Medina. Rebuilding Al Kaaba and the arbitration issue. When Allah's Messenger was 35, the Quraysh started rebuilding Al Kaaba. This was because it was a low building of white stones no more than 9 arms length from the days of Ismail. It was also roofless, leaving thieves with easy access to the treasures inside. It was also exposed to the varying forces of nature that weakened and cracked its walls, since it was built so long ago. 5 years before the advent of prophethood, there was a great flood in Makkah that swept towards Al Kaaba and almost demolished it. The Quraysh were obliged to rebuild it to safeguard its sanctity and position. The chiefs of the Quraysh decided to only use lawful money in rebuilding Al Kaaba. So all money derived from immoral means, usury, or unjust practice was excluded. At first, they were too fearful to knock down the wall, but Al Walid began the task. Seeing that he was unharmed, others participated in demolishing the walls until they reached the foundation laid by Ibrahim. When they started rebuilding its walls, they divided the work among the tribes such that each tribe was responsible for rebuilding a part of it. The different tribes collected stones and started work. The man who laid the stones was a Roman mason called Bakum. The work went on in harmony until the time came to restore the sacred black stone to its proper place. Strife broke out among the chiefs and lasted for 4 or 5 days, each contesting for the honor of placing the stone in its position. Daggers were on the point of being drawn, and great bloodshed seemed imminent. Luckily, the oldest among the chiefs, Abu Umayyah, made a proposal that was accepted by all. He said, "Let him who enters the sanctuary first of all decide on the point." It was then Allah's will that the Messenger of Allah should be the first to enter the masjid. On seeing him, all the people present cried with one voice, "Al Amin, trustworthy, has come. We are content to abide by his decision." They informed him of their objective. He asked for a mantle and spread it on the ground, placing the stone in its center. He then asked the representatives of the different clans among them to lift the stone all together. When it reached the proper place, Muhammad laid it in its original position with his own hands. This is how a very tense situation was eased and a grave danger averted by the wisdom of the Prophet. The Quraysh ran out of the lawful money they had collected, so they eliminated an area covering 6 arms length on the northern side of Al Kaaba, which is called Al Hijl or Al Hatim. They raised its door from the level ground to let in only the people whom they wished. When the structure was 15 arm lengths high, they erected the roof which rested on 6 columns. When the construction of Al Kaaba was complete, it assumed a square from form about 15 meters high. The side with the black stone and the one opposite were 10 meters long each. The black stone was 1.5 meters from the circumambulation level ground. The two other sides were 12 meters long each. The door was 2 meters high from the level ground. A building structure 0.25 meter high and 0.30 meter wide on the average surrounded Al Kaaba. It was called Ash-Shadharwan, originally an integral part of the sacred sanctuary, but the Quraysh left it out.